In the world of television, there are faces that become iconic, individuals who shape the very fabric of our daily lives through their presence. Jill Dando was one of those faces. A trusted, familiar face in British homes. A talented journalist and beloved television presenter. For years, Jill Dando's voice and image were synonymous with the BBC's Crimewatch, where she helped bring justice to countless unsolved crimes. But on April 26, 1999, the face that once illuminated our screens became the subject of one of the most perplexing and tragic unsolved crimes in British history. On that fateful spring day, Jill's life came to an abrupt and violent end. In a quiet, upscale neighborhood of London, Jill was shot dead in broad daylight, her body found mere steps from her own front door. A single shot to the head, and the world was forever changed. It was a warm, sunny morning. Jill had just returned to her home in Chiswick after visiting a neighbor. The silence of the suburban street was shattered when a shot rang out, quick, sudden, and fatal. At that moment, Jill Dando was gone, and the mystery of her murder began. The investigation that followed was swift, but the answers were elusive. Was it a random attack? A case of mistaken identity? Or was Jill Dando the victim of something much darker, something far more personal? For years, the police chased leads, followed theories, and tested forensic evidence. But in the end, Jill's killer remained elusive. Today, nearly 2 decades after her death, the question still lingers: who killed Jill Dando, and why? Jill Dando's murder was not just a tragedy, it was an enigma wrapped in confusion and contradictions. The initial reaction from the public and the police was one of shock. How could such a well-known figure be taken down so violently, in broad daylight, in the safety of her own neighborhood? There was no sign of a struggle. No evidence of robbery. Nothing that could explain the brutal murder. The killer didn't even leave behind any substantial forensic evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA. The only trace left behind was a single bullet, lodged in her skull, and a trail of questions. Theories began to surface almost immediately, some more plausible than others. The police turned to Jill's personal life, seeking any hint of motive. Did she have enemies? Was she being stalked? Or was it possible that the killer had mistaken her for someone else? The most chilling theory was one that linked Jill's murder to her work on Crimewatch. After all, Jill had been an anchor for the show for several years. Crimewatch dealt with some of the most high-profile and sensitive criminal cases in the UK. Could someone she had helped convict or expose have decided to exact their revenge? Could this have been a personal vendetta from a criminal whose life had been upended by Jill's television presence? But nothing in Jill's background suggested a target. She had no known enemies, no controversies. She was well-liked, respected in the industry, and her family and friends described her as a kind, genuine person. Yet despite the lack of clear motive, the investigation proceeded under the assumption that Jill's murder was connected to her high-profile work in television. As the police delved deeper into the case, their attention turned to the possibility of a stalker, someone who had been watching Jill, waiting for the right moment to strike. Some witnesses came forward, claiming they had seen a man loitering near Jill's home in the weeks leading up to her death. He was described as a man of medium height, dressed in dark clothing, and in his late 30s or early 40s. But these descriptions were vague at best. The police had nothing concrete to go on. There were no known connections between Jill and anyone in her neighborhood. No one had ever raised any concerns about a strange man following her. Her life seemed ordinary, a routine of work, home, and family. So, the question remained, why her? The investigation took a shocking turn when a man named Barry George was arrested in 2000. George, a man with a history of mental health issues, was considered a suspect because he had been living in the area at the time of Jill's death and had been in trouble with the law in the past. He was said to have had an unhealthy obsession with celebrities, and his odd behavior made him a prime candidate for the police. In 2001, Barry George was convicted of Jill Dando's murder. The case against him was based on circumstantial evidence, primarily the claim that particles of gunshot residue were found on his clothing. But there were inconsistencies. The evidence was weak, and George's defense team argued that the gunshot residue could have been transferred in any number of ways. He denied any involvement in the crime. In 2008, after years of appeals, the conviction was overturned. Barry George was acquitted. The evidence against him was deemed insufficient, and many believed that he had been wrongfully convicted. He was released from prison, but the true killer remained at large. The acquittal left the case in disarray. Questions about the investigation swirled. Was Barry George truly innocent? Had the police targeted him based on his mental health history and strange behavior? Or had they been so desperate to close the case that they had rushed to judgment? In the aftermath of George's acquittal, the case remained unsolved, and new theories continued to emerge. Some speculated that Jill's murder was a random act, a crime of opportunity. Others believed it was a targeted killing, carried out by someone who had been following her for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. Some even proposed that Jill had been murdered by a hired killer, a professional hitman who had been hired to eliminate her for reasons that remained unclear. One of the more bizarre theories came from a man named David Icke, a former footballer turned conspiracy theorist, who suggested that Jill's murder was part of a larger, shadowy agenda orchestrated by powerful figures. According to Icke, Jill had been murdered because of her association with the BBC, which, he claimed, was controlled by an elite cabal of individuals with sinister motives. Despite the growing number of theories, one thing was clear: Jill Dando's murder remained an open wound. The pain for her family and friends was undeniable, and the questions surrounding her death would never go away. In the years that followed, the police continued to investigate leads, re-examine the evidence, and attempt to find new witnesses or new forensic clues. They appealed to the public, asking for any information that could shed light on the case. But despite the renewed efforts, the mystery persisted. The killer had vanished without a trace. As we stand today, Jill Dando's death is still unsolved. The police, her family, and the public all continue to search for answers. The investigation may have lost its urgency in the eyes of some, but for those who knew and loved Jill, the fight for justice is far from over. Jill Dando's murder is a haunting reminder of the fragility of life, and the darkness that can exist just out of sight. No matter how famous, how beloved, we all have vulnerabilities. Jill's case is a stark example of how even the most public lives can be cut short in the most brutal, senseless ways. And so, the mystery remains. Jill Dando's killer still walks free, their identity a shadow in the night. Will we ever find out who took Jill from us? Will the truth ever emerge, or will this haunting crime remain one of the many unsolved cases that continue to plague the world? The search for answers continues. And with every passing day, the memory of Jill Dando lives on, etched into the fabric of British television history, a testament to the life she lived, the legacy she left, and the justice she deserved. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Real Unsolved Crimes. If you have any information that could help, or if you've heard anything over the years that may provide a clue, don't hesitate to come forward. No matter how small it may seem, every piece of the puzzle could bring us closer to justice. Until next time, stay vigilant. And always remember, sometimes the truth is buried beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered.